Hello and welcome to Newsclick. A survey was done by UPA government in 2013 and 14 in collaboration with UNICEF. It was called Rapid Survey on Children Below Age of 6 years. To discuss the issue, we have with us Dr. Amit Sengupta from Delhi Science Forum. Hello, Amit. The survey was done in 2013 and 14. It was started in 2013-14 by the UPA-2 and UNICEF was doing it on its behalf. So what are the key points of this survey which has still not come out in the public forum?
Actually, if you look at the broad findings of the survey, then it's relatively good news in terms of child nutrition, because classically South Asia, and particularly India as being the largest country in South Asia, has been the worst performing in the world, even worse than Sub-Saharan Africa, which is seen as the poorest region in the world in terms of child nutrition. And we have typically had sort of rates of malnourishment shown by underweight children around 50%. So, the NHFS, the Family Health Survey in 2005 put the figure at around above 40%, so about 43%. So, the recent survey which UNICEF did on behalf of the government, which spans the period of 2013 and 14, shows that it has come down, the level of malnourishment, incidence of malnourishment has come down to just under 30%. Also, the rates of stunting have come down significantly from 48% to 39, around 39%. So, overall this is good news, but the caveat that one has to also sort of keep in mind is that this still means that India is doing worse than Sub-Saharan Africa even today. So, a long way to go. But overall this is good news.
This report is still not in the public forum. What are the reasons why this report has not been made officially officially declared by the government of India?
This is a very strange story, and of course because the government has not made clear why they have been sitting on this report for over a year now. It is understood that the report was available just around the time that the government changed hands, and at least in its present form, in its finished form, it's been available since around October 2014. So, one would have expected that, given that the report does indicate significant progress in tackling child malnutrition, you have to keep in mind the fact that there was almost a total stagnation in the last 2 decades in terms of progress on tackling child malnutrition, that the government would be interested in making this report public, which brings to mind various conspiracy theories which have been doing the rounds. But one of the theories that have been doing the rounds and which seems plausible is that if you look at the disaggregated data, so the data in this report is available at the national level and as well as the state level. If you look at the disaggregated data, then significantly Gujarat is doing much worse than almost all other states, and Gujarat's performance is on par or even worse than some of the states in what is known as the Bimaru region, which are classically known as the more underdeveloped regions of India. Now, that is very, very significant for 2 reasons. One is that if you look at GNP per capita, then Gujarat is one of the wealthiest states, of the largest states, is one of the wealthiest states in India. And we hear a lot about entrepreneurship in Gujarat and about how state level policies in Gujarat has actually contributed to a rise in incomes in Gujarat, etc. Now, clearly what this survey is showing is that the apparent increase in wealth in Gujarat has been at the expense of a growing inequity. And this is also significant in the context of the so-called Gujarat model of development that the present government has been sort of putting forward as its model for the entire country. And the fact that the Gujarat model seems to be fairly empty and particularly severe on the people who are poor, who are from the marginalized communities, etc. So, that is one of the sort of theories doing the round as to why this has been suppressed, but then in the absence of any other indications from the government, it is all speculation at the moment.
Also, when you talk about this stratification of society, there is no data which is available as on the religious lines. But if you look at the social stratification on basis of caste, and just say like for the scheduled caste, it's the 42.4 is the stunted and for scheduled caste, and 42.3 is for scheduled tribes. If you look at the national budget of this current NDA government, they have cut down tribal sub plan also and plan for the scheduled caste also. So, do you find a link between these and the process of pro-corporate policies that this government has been making?
Yes, that is of course one part of it. In fact, the proclivity of the present government to cut expenditure, savage cuts in expenditure on welfare measures can also be a motivation for keeping a report like this, suppressing a report like this, because the questions would be really asked if this report was made public, and I am sure it will now have to be made public, because it is now more or less in the public domain, even though the government has not released it. The questions will be asked as to what are the reasons why we seem to have made some progress, not enough, many people would say, but some progress in tackling malnourishment. And you can probably sort of look at some reasons, plausible reasons why this has happened, and much of these are really related to the policies in the UPA-1 government, which again were driven to a very large extent by the pressures from the left. So, you had for example, the Employment Guarantee Act, you had the National Rural Health Mission, you had a push for a Food Security Act. Now, we did not get a perfect Food Security Act, nowhere near a perfect one, but we did progress in that direction. Also, the greater outlays on programs such as the ICDS, the Child Development Scheme, Anganwadi schemes, etc. So, there was this push for, in spite of, so the UPA 1 and 2 were both neoliberal in their outlook, but there was popular pressure, and at least in UPA 1, pressure from within to an extent by the left parties. Now, that was a momentum for the last two terms of the government, 1 decade long, which plausibly one can say contributed to the decrease in the rates of malnourishment, because malnourishment is actually a very good indicator of inequity. And the fact that in spite of neoliberal policies, we seem to have done quite well is an indicator that these policies were working to an extent. Now, having decided to scrap more or less all those policies, the present government would be very uncomfortable in then being questioned, because if something was working earlier, why are you scrapping them? Why have you done away with a slew of welfare measures that were initiated in the last 1 decade, which does not mean that what the UPA government did was anywhere near enough.
When you talk about this welfare schemes, even the ICDS budget was cut nearly by 50% from 16,000 crores to 8,000 crores, and the recent survey by NSSO on the health. So, if you look at the expenditure, even in the public sector, it's 6,000 per individual, and in private 26,000 per individual. While there is no adequate facility available to support this these sort of public welfare systems, the health conditions and all that. So, what do you think is the way ahead if we look at the current regime which is in power?
See, as I said earlier, that this is the most blatant aggressive right-wing neoliberal regime that India has ever had. We've had a fairly detailed neoliberal program in place since the early 90s in India, but it has never been so aggressive and so blatant, to the exclusion of all countervailing attempts to somehow mitigate the impact of neoliberal economic policies. I do not see any signs in this government of even tempering its initial enthusiasm of pushing forward neoliberal reforms. And in fact, I would say a suppression of this report is an indicator that it is going to brazen this out, that it is going to suppress all evidence which speaks to the contrary, which speaks to the necessity to mitigate the impact of neoliberalism on the poor and the indigent. Unfortunately, I don't, as far as this government is concerned, I have very few little hopes, and this is, I mean, what we are discussing is one more example of their, not only their willingness, but their aggressive design to push forward the reforms at the cost of the lives of millions of people in the country.
That's all the time we have for today, and as the things proceed, we'll be coming back to you on such issues. So thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for watching Newsclick.